apostles, we see that in the primitive church, there were times of peace. It says that many times. The church was growing in peace, and the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of the Lord. There were also times of persecution, beginning with the persecution of Stephen. And then Paul, the persecutor, yes, converted, but he had persecuted. Times of peace, times of persecution. And there were also times of disturbance, turmoil. And this is the theme of the first reading for today, a time of turmoil. We hear that some of our members, the apostles wrote, have disturbed you. And it's to the Christians who converted who were Gentiles. We hear that some of our members have disturbed you with their demands and have unsettled your minds. They acted without any authority from us. What had happened? These Christians who had been pagans believed in Jesus Christ, had received baptism, and were happy. They had received the Holy Spirit from paganism to Christianity without any intermediary stage. Instead, these people who were called Judaizers, they sustained that you couldn't do it that way, that if someone had been a pagan, they first had to become Jews, a good Jew, and then become a Christian. And so they had to be initiated just like anyone in the people of God. And the new Christians didn't understand this, but are we Christians, second-class Christians? We can't go directly from paganism to Christianity? It's not, isn't it that the resurrection of Christ had broken the old bond, had brought it to a fullness that was even greater? And they were disturbed, and it caused a lot of discussions among them. And those who wanted this were people who had pastoral arguments, theological arguments. Even a few of them were moral. They sustained no, that you had to do it that way. And that put into discussion or dispute the freedom of the Holy Spirit, even the gratuitousness of the resurrection and of grace. And they were methodical and also rigid. Of these people, Jesus had said in his teaching to the teachers, the doctors of the law, woe to you that once you have found a proselyte, you make him worse than before. You make them children of Gehenna, and that's what he said in the 23rd chapter of Matthew. These people who were ideological, more than dogmatic, they were ideological. They interpreted the law dogma as an ideology. You have to do this and this and this. A religion of prescription. And this way they robbed the Holy Spirit of freedom to act. And the people who followed were people, rigid people. They were people who did not feel comfortable. They didn't know the joy of the gospel. The perfection of the way of following Jesus was rigidity. You have to do this, 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 and this. These people, these doctors, manipulated consciences of the faithful. And they made them become either rigid or they left. And it's because of this that there are many times that I repeat that rigidity is not from the good spirit, because it puts into question the gratuitousness of the redemption, the gratuitousness of the resurrection of Christ. This is not something old. Throughout the history of the Church, this has repeated itself. Let's think of the Pelagians, these people who were famously rigid. And even in our own times, we've seen some apostolic organizations who seem to be well organized, who work well, but all of them are rigid. Each is exactly the same as the other. And then we've learned about the corruption that's inside, even among the founders. Where there is rigidity, the Spirit of God is not there, because the Spirit of God is liberty. And these people wanted to force these passages, robbing the liberty of the Holy Spirit and the gratuitousness of the redemption. To be justified, you have to do this, 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 and this. Justification is gratuitous. It's free. It's freely given. The death of Jesus is gratuitous. You don't pay for it. It's a gift. And these people didn't want to do it that way. And so the apostles gather together in this council, and in the end they write a letter, and they begin this way. It has been decided by the Holy Spirit and by ourselves not to saddle you with any burden beyond these essentials. Morals of common sense, not to confuse Christianity with paganism. That is, to abstain from food, sacrifice to idols, etc. And in the end, when these Christians who had been disturbed, were gathered together in assembly, and they received the letter. And when they read it, they were delighted with the encouragement it gave them. From turmoil to joy. The spirit of rigidity always brings disturbance or turmoil. Did I do this all right? Did I do that okay? It's scrupulosity. The spirit of evangelical freedom brings joy, because that's exactly what Jesus brought with his resurrection, joy. A relationship with God, with Jesus, is not a relationship that we have to do things. I do this and you give me this. A relationship like this, pardon me, Lord, is commercial. No, it's supposed to be gratuitous. This is the relationship between Jesus and the apostles. You are my friends. I don't call you slaves, I call you friends. You did not choose me. No, I chose you.
Questa è la gratuità.
This is gratuitousness.
Chiediamo al Signore che ci
Let us
aiuti
ask the Lord to help us
discernere
to discern
i frutti della gratuità
the fruit of evangelical gratuitousness from
della
the fruits
rigidità
of rigidity.
non evangelica.
That is not
Ci liberi dai
evangelical,
boni
and that He might
comportamento
free us from every turmoil,
di coloro che mettono la fede, la vita
from
della
those
fede
who make the
sotto
life of faith or put the
le
life of faith under
prescrizioni
prescriptions,
casistiche, le prescrizioni
detailed
che non
prescriptions
hanno
that
senso.
don't make sense, don't have any meaning.
Mi riferisco a queste
I refer
prescrizioni che non
to
hanno senso,
those
non vanno
prescriptions that
ai
don't
comandamenti.
make sense, not to the commandments,
Che ci liberi di questo
that
spirito
He might free us from this
rigidità
spirit of rigidity
che ti toglie la libertà.
that robs us of freedom. We move now into the Liturgy of the Eucharist. We remember that today we're praying for families on this International